To me, Global Reach Out is inspiring.
Is connecting with God, reaching out to the world, and impacting life.
The stories that are shared is so personal and it deeply impacted me.
Global Reach Out to me is reach out to the truth.
Connecting hearts, connecting lives. You're listening to Global Reach Out.
Hello friends, a very warm welcome from Global Reach Out.
Hello everyone. In our last session, I mentioned to you that the threat from the external enemies of Nehemiah was far from over, right? That's right. And that's what I'll be sharing with you today. The question is, what was the strategy of the external enemies this time round? The answer is a dialogue session. Really? That's right. A dialogue session with Nehemiah. Now, what's that? You see, his enemies requested for a dialogue session. Nehemiah records for us. This is what he says. Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, the Arab, and the rest of our enemies found out that I had finished rebuilding the wall and that no gaps remained, though we had not yet set up the doors in the gates. So Sanballat and Geshem sent a message asking me to meet them at one of the villages in the plain of Ono. But I realized they were plotting to harm me. So Nehemiah's response was that he had important work to do. So he sent messengers to them saying, I'm engaged in a great work, so I'm sorry, I cannot come down for the dialogue session. And Nehemiah said, why should I stop working to come down and meet you guys? 4 times they sent the same message to Nehemiah, and each time he gave them the same reply. Altogether, they issued 4 formal invitations to Nehemiah to have a conference management on human conflict. How persistent his enemies were. Imagine. Was that their sincere desire and real intention? Or was it a plot to kill him and a distraction ploy? Well, it was the latter. Nehemiah did not want to take any chances. If he were to go, he might not be able to return. So his reply to them was that he was too busy to meet them because he was doing something important. Here, Nehemiah practiced the principle of priority. That's right. Let me repeat that. Nehemiah practiced the principle of priority. First thing first. Leadership needs to be focused to finish what God has called us to do and not get distracted along the way. In effect, Nehemiah was saying something like this: I have a wall to finish, and so I must finish the wall. His opponents were all out to get him to stop the rebuilding project. Their attempt to get him there did not work. So, the question is, did they give up? No, they didn't, because they tried, listen, for the 5th time, and this time a more sinister method. What was that? Oh well, a letter. Not just any letter, but a slender letter, purportedly written by Nehemiah himself. And this is what Nehemiah records for us. He says, the 5th time, Sanballat's servant came with an open letter in his hand. And this is what it says in the letter. There is a rumor among the surrounding nations, and Geshem tells me it is true that you and the Jews are planning to rebel, and there is why you are building the wall. According to his reports, you plan to be their king. He also reports that you have appointed prophets in Jerusalem to proclaim about you, saying, "Look, there is a king in Judah." You can be very sure that this report will get back to the king. So I suggest, kind of a warning, right? I suggest that you, Nehemiah, come and talk it over with me. His enemies now resorted to innuendos, character assassination. That's right. This time the enemy, Sanballat, wrote an open letter accusing him of treason. So basically, Nehemiah was accused of what? A, rebellion. An eyewitness by the name of Geshem the Arabian would testify against him. This appeared to be a strong case against him. B, wanting to make himself king. By doing so, they cast aspersion on Nehemiah's motive for rebuilding the city walls. And C, bribing the prophets to make them say there was the king in Judah. Now, Nehemiah was threatened with all these accusations. Imagine if all these words were to get to the Persian monarch king. Nehemiah's career would have ended and his life executed. At the same time, while making all these allegations, his enemies tried to appear, listen to this, conciliatory. How scheming, right? You know why? Because they asked him to come down for a conference so that an understanding could be reached and clarification given so that they would not report Nehemiah to the king. Outwardly, of course, they appeared to have good motives. But inwardly, it was an entrapment to force Nehemiah to meet them and get rid of him. What a smart move. So question is, again, how, or rather, what could Nehemiah do in such a situation? What could he do? Well, Nehemiah did two things. First, he denied the allegation, right? Nehemiah said, "There is no truth in any part of your story," replying to them. "You are making up the whole thing." They were just trying to intimidate us, imagining that they could discourage us and stop the work. Second thing that Nehemiah did is that he prayed to God. There you go again, prayer. He went to God again and recommitted the rebuilding project to God. He said, "Their hands will get too weak for the work, and it will not be completed." He prayed against it in the opposite direction. "Now, strengthen my hands, O God," Nehemiah requested of God. Strengthen my hands. Now, earlier on, Sanballat tried to turn the people against Nehemiah by telling the people that Nehemiah wanted to set himself up as king. He tried to turn the officials against Nehemiah too, by threatening to report to the king that Nehemiah was starting a rebellion. By having an unsealed letter delivered to Nehemiah, he wanted the contents to be made public. Quite obvious, isn't it? Sanballat's accusation was untrue, and that did not divert Nehemiah from his task, however. Now, since their 5 attempts failed, his enemies tried Oh dear, the 6th time. And this time, they tried to get someone else. They tried to get someone to kill Nehemiah instead. They bribed Shemaiah to tell Nehemiah on the pretext that his life was in danger and he needed to hide in the temple since the people were coming to kill him. And this is what Nehemiah records for us in the book of Nehemiah. He said this, "Later I went to visit Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah and grandson of Mehetabel, who was confined to his home. He said, 'Let us meet together inside the temple of God and blot the doors shut. Your enemies are coming to kill you tonight.'" What a scheme. Well, Shemaiah misused or abused God's law when he asked Nehemiah to hide in the temple. Because according to God's law, it would have been wrong for Nehemiah to run into the temple to hide because he wasn't a priest. And so Nehemiah knew this, and so he replied, saying this, "Should someone in my position run from danger? Should someone in my position enter the temple to save his life? No, I won't do it." So that was a straightforward answer, reply, response to the scheme to kill him. So here's what we learn. Nehemiah refused to run away when he realized their evil intention. In other words, he discerned that God had not sent Shemaiah. So Nehemiah responded by saying, "Should someone in my position run from danger? Should someone in my position enter into the temple to save his life?" He would not go into the temple to hide because he knew it was legally wrong and morally discouraging to the people. And second, Nehemiah prayed to God for justice to be done. Right? His prayer says something like this, "Remember, oh my God, all the evil things that Tobiah and Sanballat have done. And remember Noadiah the prophet and all the prophets like her who have tried to intimidate me." How far? The question is, how far would our enemies go to destroy us? And you know what? I think the answer is, as far as they can. So the question for all of us is this. The question for you, my friends, is this. Are you up to the challenge? How will you prepare yourself to respond and handle oppositions and obstacles in your life, in your leadership? If you are serious about leadership and willing to learn a better way of handling oppositions from Nehemiah, then, hey, my friends, stay tuned for our next session. Until then, God bless and goodbye for now.
And that's this week's episode of the Effective Leadership Program, brought to you by Global Reach Out. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.